All right. I apologize, guys. We're back. That's something we still need to get fixed on our end as far as why our feed freezes up. So I'm gonna wait for a few people to jump back on here with us. Again, I apologize that we dropped our feed, but we got it back. So while people jump back on here, read some more comments real quick. Conrad also says, keep in mind this is WWE and Vince McMahon you're talking about. Alan says, I'd be happy with them splitting. I'm assuming he's referring to New Day. William says, Hacker is Jinder Mahal.
That's got to be a joke. You got to be joking, man.
I hope so. Again, if you're just tuning back in, I appreciate you coming back. Our feed froze up, and we had to reboot the not reboot the entire system, but we had to stop the stream and then restart it. That's something we're still looking to get fixed on our end, so I apologize, but hopefully we don't freeze up again. Thanks for tuning back in. Let's see. And we're just reading comments until we get some people back on here. Dusty says if they went with a gimmick in line with his real-life expertise as a police officer while he was in the Indies, it could potentially be a success, but this is WWE Creative we're talking about. So it could also turn out to be a Max Moon moment. Yeah. Thanks, guys, for tuning back in with us.
Someone says it's Lars.
No.
Look at the body tone. It's definitely not anybody. Like, Jinder Mahal would be too big. Like, it's definitely not anybody.
I'm not going to get on this soapbox, but Lars just needs to be gone. I don't know why he wasn't included
His
in
most
the releases.
prominent like feud was Lucha House Party.
No kidding. And by the way, guys, we have not lost the questions as far as the ask the hosts, because I have a running stream here. It's just continual. So we'll get to those in a little bit. Jonathan says we're the hackers. I wish. Throw us into a WWE storyline and we won't be doing this show anymore because we'll be getting a paycheck from WWE. So all right, let's we'll put that to bed. Anything else?
Just the last thing I wanted to talk about, and I kind of mentioned this to you, is in a lot of the groups, I'm noticing so many people like mad about these layoffs and things of that nature, and people getting mad. Guys, we were also mad when these guys weren't getting their pushes though too. So you can't have the best of both worlds sometimes. We also got to remember that this is not like WWE has the first time WWE has done this. Like this was just a coronavirus only thing. Most of these guys wanted out. I don't want to say most. Some of these guys wanted out of their contract. Some of these guys weren't even getting on. Like the Colognes weren't on TV for like 2 years. Mm-hmm. Some of them were in terrible, storylines and gimmicks. That the picture just surfaced of what Vince McMahon wanted the Revival to wear. And I laughed. I was like, even I could say that that's bogus.
I didn't laugh. I was disgusted. I mean, if that's true, that was horrendous. Well,
it's got to be true because if you look back at what they wanted Neville to wear when Neville was still there, I believe it 100% that was what Vince wanted them to do. They had hinted at them wanting to be kind of a comedic tag team in the Uso storylines and things of that nature. So
right.
It's one of those. It's one of those things where I'm just like, we gotta understand that this was not just done for the simple fact of they were trying to save money. It's also done because they see that they don't need these people. They didn't need it. All the people they released, they did not need them. They were not in prominent storylines and weren't really creative, really had nothing for them going forward. And now you're going to get to see Rusev and some of these guys, EC3, which we thought was going to get a major push when he got called up. You're going to see some of these guys get some other storylines in different promotions. The other thing I want people to understand is that AEW cannot sign every single person that gets released by WWE. And Vince McMahon, I think, came out and talked about we have to stop being worried about other promotions, specifically AEW, signing our D-rated talent. People who who don't get over in our product. That doesn't mean they're a D-level wrestler. It means that for the product that WWE puts out, they don't have a fit. And some of these, we have to understand, like, I don't think Kenny Omega would work in WWE. I think he would get the generic pop, like, because people know who he is. But his storyline, his wrestling, like, he would have to change everything about him to fit into WWE's product. And
yeah.
Like, you would get a lackluster Kenny Omega. I don't want to say it wouldn't work. You would get a lesser version of Kenny Omega.
You would get some good matches out of him, but I think the difference between bringing Kenny Omega to WWE and how they've handled AJ Styles is that AJ Styles has had to go through kind of they haven't changed his gimmick or persona much. I mean, he doesn't really have a gimmick persona per se, but he's definitely had to become molded to the WWE's how they handle a talent when it comes to not just in-ring stuff, but just their overall personality. I mean, case in point, the Styles Clash is not his finisher anymore. It's more of a setup move, and his phenomenal forearm is his finisher. He didn't use a phenomenal forearm before he came to WWE. So my guess is they'd tell Kenny Omega, sorry, the One Wing Angel is not going to be your finisher anymore. And it's just, it's stuff like that, because if WWE didn't create it, they're going to make some changes to it. And I think I agree from the standpoint that Kenny Omega might still put on some good matches if he went to WWE, but he would not be the Kenny Omega that he was in New Japan. And, I mean, and to some degree, in AEW, he's not the same. Kenny Omega's not in AEW now what he was in New Japan to some degree, because, you need to you can't be as edgy on American television when it comes to wrestling as you could in Japan. So I also wanted to kind of piggyback off what you said with, the releases and furloughs, layoffs, whatever you want to call it. People tend to forget that WWE, number one, WWE is a business. I don't care how many zeros are on their balance sheet. It is still a business. They still have their own expenses.
Yep.
And something else that, I think part of it is a lot of people just want to, and I'm not a WWE apologist by any means. I've made it very clear that I think the overall product of WWE is as bad as it's ever been currently, with some highlights here and there. That being said, it costs money to run the WWE network. It costs money to still pay the people that are still there. It costs money to still keep the Performance Center up and running. I get that they're still running a profit, but that's the point of a business. You're in business to make a profit. WWE is also a publicly traded company. They have stockholders they have to answer to. Not to mention, they pay an insane amount that we probably don't even know about for prior wrestlers' rehab visits or stints. That includes guys that maybe worked one or two enhancement matches. If they were on WWE TV at any point, WWE can and has foot the bill for rehab visits, doctor bills. In the case of Harley Race, there was a story that came out over the weekend, or maybe before that prior to Harley Race's death, they were paying for 100% of the medical bills for Harley Race. So again, I'm not a WWE apologist. I'm not a Vince McMahon apologist, but look at it in a different lens, that it's still a publicly traded business. They still have to make a profit. It's not that Vince McMahon is making the entire call from the standpoint of it's whatever he says goes. They have stockholders and shareholders that they have to answer to. So
right.
Just throwing that out there.
I also, just to tie all this together, I thought this was interesting. I was watching some interviews and stuff last night of just different people shooting on different topics, WWE, different wrestlers, and I thought this was an interesting statement from Sabu, actually. Mm-hmm. And he kind of talks of one of the kind of mini documentaries I was watching was these wrestlers shooting on their WWE contract negotiations with Vince McMahon and things like that. And Sabu was talking about before he went to ECW offer that was on the table from Vince McMahon, and they wanted him to kind of come in and I'm forgetting the name of the gimmick, but it was what Rikishi did at first.
The Too Cool thing?
No, before that, like when he first
head shrinkers thing.
With the thing over the face and he didn't talk. I think that was Rikishi, wasn't it?
Talking about Umaga?
No, this is like way back. I'm like when
Kamala?
No,
I don't know where you're going.
I have to tell you. I have to look it up. I forget. Basically, they wanted him to come in and do this with the Iron Sheik. That's who it was with.
Mark says the Sultan.
Yes, thank you, Mark. That's who I was talking about. Yes.
Anyway,
they wanted Sabu to go with that gimmick, and he was like, I don't really want to do that. And the reason why I bring that up is the comment that Vince McMahon and kind of WWE gave him is that we don't hire creative talent, we create talent.
Mm-hmm.
We create people. We don't hire creative people. We don't hire people who are already gimmick ready, pretty much in a sense. We create you. We make you, which is, if you look at their entire history, that makes sense. If you think about, they buy people's gimmicks so they can't use them anymore.
Yeah.
Because they want to be able to have the rights to that gimmick. I think I saw someone bring it up. They talked about why they would bring up the Dudley Boys during the New Day's title victory. I was like, because they own the Dudley Boy name. They can't go, the Dudley Boys can't go out on the independent scene and be the Dudley Boys. They have to be Team 3D, or they have to, and I think WWE owns that now too, if I'm not mistaken. But they always have to change their name.
That's why Bully Ray, as he's known on like Ring of Honor and Independence and such, he can't use Bubba Ray Dudley because, again, if WWE created it or currently owns it, yeah, they're not going to be afraid to mention it on TV, regardless of whether or not they created it.
Bubba Ray shoots on that. He shoots on how he presented Vince with his Bully Ray gimmick during his kind of return to WWE, and Vince knew about it. Was like, we can't have a bully on TV, not with our stance and stuff.
And I think that's part of it, but I think it's also due to the fact that Bully Ray was not created by WWE.
Right.
So.
And so that's where I go back to, is that they either are going to buy your gimmick and pretty much buy you out of it so you don't have rights to it anymore,
mm-hmm.
or they're going to say, you know what, if you're going to come here, you're not going to do that gimmick.
Right.
And you're not going to be able to be who you are, what worked. You know, we saw that with Matt Hardy.
Agreed.
We barely got a broken Matt Hardy in WWE, and it's sad because you're going to see that blow up now somewhere else. That's kind of where I just wanted to bring that up, is that we have to understand that this is in long term good for both parties. This is good for WWE to save some money and stop paying these guys that they're not using, and at the same turn of it, this is good for those guys, because now these guys, Zack Ryder's shirt on All Pro Tees is like one of the number one selling shirts.
It is the number one selling shirt
on All Pro Tees right now. It's because these guys are gonna go somewhere. I couldn't tell you where. Like I said, AEW cannot and will not sign all this. Someone posted an invasion angle for AEW.
No,
that would be terrible. AEW doesn't want to do that.
The invasion angle's been well overdone.
Nobody, not especially with those guys, it wouldn't even make sense.
Yeah, you can't put together Rusev and Revival or Revolt or whatever they're going to be called, which I'll bring that up in a second. Like, you don't put EC3 in that group. Like, it doesn't work. It kind of worked whenever you had ECW doing their invasion angle, or actually the couple times they've done an invasion angle with WWF/WWE, because they were the tribe of extreme. Like, that's how they tried to play it off, is that they all had that thing in common. In this hypothetical, again, fantasy booking, Rusev, EC3, Revival, whatever they're going to be called, besides being in WWE, they had nothing in common. I don't even think they competed in the ring against each other. They definitely didn't have any storylines with each other. So, yeah.
And it would be like an Aces and Eights kind of storyline. It would be terrible. I mean, it just has no rhyme or reason. AEW cannot sign. They're a business, too. They're not going to go sign 8 of these dudes. I would venture to say
5 tops.
I was going to say 3 to 4.
Well, 5 including Revival is what I'm saying, because they're almost. I'd say they're almost all but guaranteed to go unless they decide
I think they're already a done deal, though. I think that was already decided well in advance that they were going to get a deal. But out of those people that are on that list of seeing how well Zack Ryder's shirt sold, I could see them wanting Zack Ryder.
Conrad says, "Oh, I disagree. I want that fallen WWE faction not as a quote-unquote takeover or invasion, but a bunch of WWE misfits doing their thing as the future endeavored. That's awesome. There is your rhyme and reason." No, AEW is not going to use a future endeavor. They're not going to use something that WWE... They're not going to use a WWE term unless AEW can make fun of it or, whatever. And no one is going to be in a storyline where they're pretty much being made, they're pretty much going to be the butt of that joke. Rusev's not going to do that. Revival's not going to do that. Revival is going to come in and they're going to have a program with the Young Bucks because that's what everybody's expecting. That's what the Bucks have wanted. That's what the Revival wants. I don't see them coming into AEW and not being thrown into that picture with them immediately, even if their tag titles aren't involved. Like, that's what I'm sorry, Conrad, I respect your opinion. I respect everyone else's opinion, but 100% disagree. I think that would be a terrible idea to have whatever future endeavored.
Not to mention they would lose because AEW is not going to let like WWE kind of win in a sense. And that's what happens when you do those invasion storylines. Like
Matthew says it sounds like an Impact storyline. Yeah, agree.
The reason why I said that is like even when ECW kind of did their reunite and they did even though it was under WWE's banner at that time, they did like the ECW invasion angle. You're putting ECW over if they win. Like when we saw NXT do their kind of invasion angle here recently. Mm-hmm. They did that purposely to put NXT over. To do this, you would have to bring these guys in and then eventually have them lose to AEW guys, which automatically cancels whatever kind of push you just had for those guys.
And the thing with AEW is they're very big on having a storyline be like a long-term thing. And credit to AEW for doing this, and I've said this on the show before. They're not afraid to drop a gimmick or a storyline or whatever if it's not going to work long term.
Right.
They dropped the Nightmare Collective because they tried it for 2 months or however long it was, and they dropped it. This future endeavored thing that's just what we'll call it. If they went with that, it would be dropped within 2 months, and I don't think that AEW wants to take the risk of putting all these guys in a storyline, and let's just say hypothetically it doesn't work. Well, then these guys that were pretty big in WWE and you want them to be big in AEW, again, Rusev, Revival, maybe EC3, I don't know. But if they put them in that kind of storyline that flops, then you've just all but buried them in AEW going forward, in my opinion.
Right.
Let's see. I'm going to read some comments real quick. Travis says Vince was funding ECW Vince was funding ECW years before they combined under WWE banner. Conrad says, guys, it's a funny storyline, not a serious one. Yeah, that's just it. That's why I don't think it would work, because if you're bringing these guys in, again, I'm just saying Rusev and the Revival at this point. I wouldn't even say Rusev's as a for sure thing. Whatever. But I think the AEW doesn't want to bring in a new talent. Rusev maybe as a kind of a comedic role, but they still want to bring them in as a serious addition to their roster. The storyline might be funny, but unless it's kind of like a ha-ha inside joke, as the Bucks and Cody and Omega kind of do on their Being the Elite channel, which I'll plug that in a little bit. Unless it's like an inside joke, they don't really do a whole lot of funny ha-ha storylines. I mean, that they have like the Britt Baker Shivani thing, which that's about it. And by the way, guys, again, I can't tell you this enough. We appreciate the comments, but I've mentioned this before. We really try as best as we can to keep the show clean in all aspects, and that includes the comments. So I'd appreciate it if you guys could, as far as just profanity and ripping on each other, if you guys could just keep that to a I don't even want to say a bare minimum, to a not at all. So but anyway, so I had a few things I wanted to mention real quick while we're talking about the revival. I'll bring this up. We'll get to our Ask the Host in about 10 minutes or so. I'll just go through these little blurbs real quick. And I told Cole about this a couple days ago. So Revival have kind of teased what their new name is going to be, regardless of where they go. They recently trademarked the name The Revolt, and they've actually so Dax, which one was Dax? That one was which one was Dax in WWE? It doesn't matter. Anyway, on one of their Instagrams, they kind of put up this profile pic, but it's almost like the V for Vendetta logo. It's got the red circle with a red V, but it's also got an R thrown in. And so they could just be trolling people. It could be legit. I don't know. But what do you think of the name Revolt as opposed to maybe so they've trademarked. So here's a list of, not a list, but here are some of their trademarks. Revolt, they've trademarked Shatter Machine, they've trademarked Top Guys, and something else. I don't remember what it was, but I don't think it was a name I don't think it was a potential name for the tag team. I think it was just
like a slogan or
something like that. So between Revolt, Shatter Machine, and Top Guys.
So I look at it like this. Shatter Machine's the name of their finisher move. I don't think you call your tag team that as well. So I like that they didn't go and move to that name, because I like that they're keeping that for their tag team. The Top Guys, it doesn't sound like a tag team name. It sounds like a cool subtitle tag team. It
sounds like something you'd have on the back of a T-shirt, and your name of the tag team's on the front.
Right. Like it's one of those. I'm trying to think of a good example, like the Cerebral Assassin Triple H. It's one of those like nicknames that you can give them, but it's not their name in a sense. I like the Revolt because they can still do the FTR stuff.
Yeah.
And play off that gimmick because it doesn't really hurt to still do that.
Agreed.
And they can keep all their ring gear that has the FTR stuff and all that on there. So I actually like it. I think I like it better than the Revival.
I do too.
Just because I never really understood the gimmick or the name to begin with when they were the Revival. To be honest, I thought it was like a church group. I thought they were going for like this really bad, we're gonna revive the WWE kind of, or revive the tag team, which they kind of went that route, but they never really got to do it. The Revolt is cooler for them because they're revolting against switching to this different style of wrestling. They're the Top Guys because they do what they do, and I like that.
Yeah, I think the Revival is just maybe a way to say, we are trying to revive you kind of hinted at this a little bit, but revive the old school mentality of wrestling, what it once was. Right when they came from NXT, they had their slogans. It was like not flips, just fists or something like that. But basically just trying to work the crowd from the standpoint that you're laughing about something.
Williams said the Mechanics.
The Mechanics is what they were before the Revival.
I know. I laugh because that's, if you think about it, it's such a terrible thing.
Oh, agreed. This is something else I was going to mention. Dusty kind of beat me to it. He says, I'd say Rusev is all but confirmed to AEW, especially after JR's bonus podcast yesterday. JR made it clear that Rusev, they are very interested in going after him. To kind of make it short and sweet, he wasn't shy off about saying that. Let's see, just a couple quick things.
The good hands.
Yeah. let's see. Gotta pull up the right link here. So I mentioned this to Cole, but the NXT Japan plans, they've completely dropped that. There were plans that they're going to launch that later this year, but obviously with coronavirus, health regulations, things like that, they've pretty much completely dropped it. From what I'm seeing, the plan, it's not like the plan's put on hold or they're not going to try it again later. It's quote unquote, it's dead in the water is what they're saying. So, and I think that's the right call. I don't think NXT Japan would have been able to compete with New Japan. You got to remember there's also All Japan Pro Wrestling. I think is DDT Pro Wrestling, is that in Japan as well? Or if it's even still around, I'm not sure. But so I thought that was interesting.
I was just thinking about that too as we were talking about that. WWE doesn't have a really good track record with the Japanese wrestling superstars. Like, I just don't know if they even have a good enough vision to make the difference between NXT UK and Japan is totally different because there's no language barrier for most of those guys.
Right.
If you look at WWE right now and the guys the top talents that they've brought over from Japan, and they've ruined most of them, if not all, or watered them down to a lackluster career when they could have been. Asuka was literally undefeated, and you destroyed any chance of her being one of the most. She's one of the most talented wrestlers on the roster, and I love what she's doing right now. I think she's hilarious, even as a heel. I laugh every time she's in the ring with her little dancing and mimicking people's theme songs, and like I'm laughing at it. But she's watered down. It's hard to believe that she'll ever be able to compete with a Becky Lynch, with a Ronda Rousey, with those people because they beat her down and watered her down. Same with Shinsuke.
Yep.
Shinsuke had these prominent roles with AJ Styles and some of those matches, and it's just they're hard to watch. Kairi Sane, when she came in, she could have had a huge pop and could have went pretty far on her from her NXT standpoint coming into the roster, and then they water her down and put her in a tag team that they never did anything with the belts when they had them, and just really destroyed that. And so, and you could even keep going further back, like Kushida right now. And I think they're going to put the cruiserweight belts on him if I had to guess, but because they like him. But like every single time I look at someone they've brought over, they don't do much with them.
Yeah. One other quick thing I wanted to mention. So apparently WWE is going back to a taping schedule. They're still having their next few Raw and SmackDowns be live. I had the link for the schedule, but I don't have it up now, and I'm not sure where it went. But basically, long story short, I think the next 2 weeks of Raw and SmackDown and NXT are going to be live, but then after that, they're going to go to a taping schedule. Let's see. So basically, yeah, they've changed their minds on whether they will pre-record episodes or go live. It says the new schedule will allow them to air combinations of live shows plus some tape shows so that talent will not have to travel weekly. This gives them about a 2-week quarantine before having them return. So basically, it amounts to WWE being able to time it to where you bring in all the talent at once, do live stuff, but then also tape content so that and this I'm sure this is going to get very complicated, but basically not have talent. You're not going to have too much talent in the Performance Center at one time, or I'm assuming it's going to be the Performance Center wherever they're taping. So to go a little bit further, the reason for this change is because Fox and USA Network executives reached out to Vince McMahon and informed him that airing pre-recorded shows will not affect how much they pay him, as long as the footage airs on their network first before anywhere else. Previously, there was concern that WWE would have to make a cut in the money, or would have to take a cut in the money these networks were paying them because of their language in their contracts, stating that they were only allowed to air episodes that weren't live a few times a year. So basically, McMahon jumped the gun. He got panicked. But then after, I guess, reaching out to the networks, they figured out that essentially the next 2 or 3 weeks of programming will be live, and then they're going to go to taped footage or taped content for however long. I find this last statement funny. Now that he knows that the money is safe, he changed the schedule to accommodate the superstars by giving them longer breaks between traveling. Now that he knows the money is safe. Whoever wrote that, that's just fantastic journalism. All right. So we're going to get to your questions here in just a second. I want to let you guys know real quick, though, that you can check out the Going Broadway podcast.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
With new shows every week on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, as well as a number of other platforms where you can access your podcasting. If you're watching us live right now, each show is archived in some parts, or in some cases in multiple parts, because our streaming wants to freeze up. So go back and watch those, and you can find those on Facebook and our YouTube channel as well. The YouTube link is right there. The Facebook link is over there, if I can point to it right. And then our Twitter handle is below Cole. I'll go through those here in just a second. Please also download our free app. It's called Yo Radio. It can also be downloaded via the App Store or Google Play. Yo Radio is the most advanced user-driven, there we go, streaming radio service on the market today. Everything you'd expect and more from the most full-featured platforms ever developed. You can listen to an endless genre of music podcasting, including our show via the Lineup channel, sports, news, and more 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Again, that's Yo Radio via the App Store, Google Play, or by visiting yoradio.com, and it's always 100% free. Real quick, we are about, what was the last tally?
29 likes, I think.
29 likes away from being able to do our belt giveaway. Yeah, 1,971 likes as of right now. So, again, share this page or share our page with your friends. Put it in your groups. Help us to get to that 2,000. Now, I wanted to let you guys know there's been a quick update to our belt giveaway. We're not giving away one belt.
No.
We're not giving away 2 belts.
No.
We are now giving away 3 belts.
By God!
That's just as good as having JR on the soundbite machine over here. So I've told you already, we're giving away the big gold, which I have in my possession. We are giving away an NWA domed globe, which I should have in my possession hopefully within the next month. And we're also giving away a 3rd belt, which I will reveal on this Thursday's show. And I will have it with me. So tune in for that reveal. Again, we're going to do 3 different drawings. And how this is going to work, the person that, basically the person I draw first, they're going to get their first pick of whichever of the 3 belts they want. The second person that I draw will pick from the other 2 that are remaining, and then the 3rd winner will get the 3rd belt that's left over. So, again, we're going to be giving away 3 belts now. The big gold that I've shown previously, the NWA domed globe, and then a 3rd belt, which I will have in my possession, and I will reveal this Thursday on this Thursday's show. So let's get to some questions, and I'm going to go off the post first that I posted last night, since these questions were submitted prior to today's show. So I want to read Trevor's comment because he was the first one to send us a question. He said, what are your hidden gem must-watch matches or pay-per-views to help get through the rest of this quarantine? You want to go first?
So I haven't been watching a whole lot of matches as I have been like documentaries and interviews, because I'm more interested in hearing about what people have to say about the product than I am rewatching the product, in a sense, if that makes sense.
Right.
So I was on WWE Network and I started watching the Ruthless Aggression kind of breakdown that they do, a little documentary or whatever. And there's just a lot of content on WWE Network that I want to get to that are docu-series that break down wrestlers, how they got to WWE, how they their backstories, things like that. I like watching the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast, and I like trying to find the snippets of Chris Jericho's podcast and some of these guys who have left here recently, and just hearing some of their thoughts. As I shared earlier, I'm watching some different interviews of guys just spitting on random topics, negotiating contracts. I watched a couple about people's thoughts on CM Punk and how he's been in the business and their interactions with him. So Dark Side of the Ring, I've been watching that when it airs.
Yep.
There's also a show I highly recommend that's on, I believe it's on Viceland as well, called The Wrestlers. And it kind of just breaks down the current climate of wrestling right now. Talks about up-and-coming wrestlers, pro wrestling, just different topics that are huge in wrestling right now. So that's kind of where I've been at, is watching more documentaries and interviews that break down the current climate, what's happened in the past, and different people who've interacted with the product.
Yeah, for me, at least most recently, with it being just getting through WrestleMania season, and I don't use the term getting through lightly, I went back and watched just random bits and pieces of prior matches from WrestleManias. One thing I found interesting, and I don't necessarily recommend a particular match or promotion, but apparently on the WWE Network, there are matches from as old as the 50s on the network, which I didn't know. But if I want to get specific as far as particular promotions or particular matches, anything. So I've said this before. I'm very much an old school fan. I'll watch. I was born in 1985. Actually, for the record, my birthday is tomorrow. 35 years old. 35 years young. I'm sorry. But I was born in 85, and I'll go back and watch stuff that was, was before I was born. I mean, Championship Wrestling from Florida in the 70s, WCCW in the 70s and 80s. And you can find a lot of that stuff on the network. You can find it on YouTube. I want to see if I can give you some specifics. So the Christmas Star Wars event from 1980, it's either 1980 or 1982, for World Class Championship Wrestling. It's on the network. Let's see. Anything Mid-South, really. Any title versus title matches I've always found interesting. So, I mean, you throw in Harley Race against Bob Backlund, Ric Flair against Bob Backlund. Before, basically back when WWF was WWF and was just a territory like Mid-Atlantic Wrestling and Georgia Championship Wrestling, Mid-South, I could go on and on. So, Trevor, I hope that was a good answer to your question. Let me see here. What was the next one here? William says, I've got a few, but he didn't ask on that thread, so we'll get to
He's
him.
asked a couple now in this.
Yeah, I know. I definitely want to go in order of how they're actually asked, though. Ken Hamblin says, in your opinions, who else should Stone Cold have on his network show? That's a good question.
Just from like the interviews and stuff that I've been like watching here recently, someone that I could hear talk about the business and just seemed like they had a very fair perspective. I actually really enjoy listening to Bubba Ray Dudley. Just because every time that he's talked about WWE, even from a negative standpoint, he's always built up the people that weren't the problem. And he's always talked about how maybe he handled the situation wrong, or things of that nature. I just watched him talk about how him and Devon never thought they should have broke up in WWE, or WWF.
Right.
Honestly, there were just certain things. So like him, it would probably never happen. I don't want to say never, but Chris Jericho. I really enjoy Chris Jericho's take on things, and I think him and Stone Cold would really mesh because Chris Jericho is actually really respectful.
It'd be more likely that Chris Jericho would have Stone Cold on his podcast.
I think Chris Jericho is really respectful in how he handles things on his podcast and on different interviews. So I think that would be a good one as well. But if we're talking like current WWE, because it kind of seems like they're going to stick with going with guys who have good standing relationships.
Yeah.
I actually would love to see, just people know me, I would love to see John Cena. Just because I would like to hear John.
Wish I had that soundbite ready.
I would like to hear John Cena's take on all of the different accusations that have been made on him of ruining top wrestlers or ruining people's careers, things that happen behind the scenes with his breakup with the Bella, and just different things. I would like to hear, and I don't know if he'll ever speak. I think there's a reason why he doesn't do those, but I would like to hear his side, his take of the accusations that were made by Alex Riley, by Wade Barrett, by some of these guys, and hear the other side of the story, because there's always two sides.
William makes a good point. He says UWF was good. Yeah, I don't know if UWF's on the network. I don't know why it wouldn't be. But Sean says Big Show would be cool. He says, or Taker. Taker's been on
Taker's
it.
been on
Undertaker has been on the podcast.
And
Big Show was on it too.
Just aired one with Big Show.
Yeah.
So go check them out. The Undertaker one's really good. The Goldberg one's actually really good too.
I was surprised by the Goldberg one too. It wasn't bad.
Had a lot of good information and stuff in it.
I'd like to have Shawn Michaels be on it.
Yeah.
Who else?
Some of the older guys are fun because they can talk about storylines and give more insight to why they were done creatively, what the thought process was behind doing it.
Mm-hmm. This won't be a popular one necessarily, but I bring this up, A, because they're buddies, and 2, he's had a history of being, in particular with the Bruiser Brody murder, so he's kind of been in the situation of being involved with something that was controversial. Savio Vega, I wouldn't mind seeing him on there. Gosh, I want to give more than 2 answers here.
I wouldn't mind seeing some women on there either, like a Trish Stratus or a Lita. Just from the standpoint of, because I liked when because he did his USA the Stone Cold Steve Austin show that was on USA, and I really enjoyed his interview with Becky Lynch.
Yeah.
And kind of the insight that they had. But I would want to see someone who's been in the business a little bit longer, who can kind of speak to what women's wrestling was like then and what it's like now, how that revolution came about. Was this something that was even talked about 15 years ago, 20 years ago?
Somebody like, I don't know, because again, I'm very much an old school fan. So someone like Sergeant Slaughter, who a lot of people are already familiar with his WWF run in the early 90s and in some cases the 80s, but he worked Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling as well, back in the old school NWA days. Being able to hear him talk about that, old stories relating to that, I don't know. That's all.
Someone said Ric Flair. Wasn't he on like the other podcast that he used to do? It's not the Broken Skull Sessions anymore. They had the other one that was on the network for a while.
No, Flair's already been on Broken Skull Sessions.
Has he?
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if it was the He's definitely.
I think that's been the most recent one, actually. Let me look.
I haven't watched that one yet. Mick Foley would be a good one.
Yeah, Mick Foley that'd be a great one. I'd definitely tune into that one. Okay, let's see what other questions we got on this one. William says, what shows are you guys streaming during the pandemic? I got Ozark and Botch on Amazon Prime. I'm not. My wife and I will catch something every now and again. I mean, we're not really binging anything. If I watch a lot of anything, it's primarily wrestling related to some degree in some capacity. I will. I've shouted at this group before. Beltomania has a Facebook and a YouTube page. They're live every Tuesday night at 7:15 Eastern, 6:15 Central. Check them out. I try to watch them when I can. I try to watch any, not necessarily mainstream show or podcast just to, kind of give them support as well. If I had to say anything specific, I mean, like even when I'm here at work, I mean, I won't be watching it, but if I'm getting work done, I'll put on a Broken Skull session in the background or a Jericho podcast or something like that. Grilling with JR is good. AEW Unrestricted. I wouldn't say I'm streaming, at least from a video or TV standpoint, a lot. I'm listening to a lot of just like podcasting, to be completely honest.
Yeah. So my wife and I have very different tastes when it comes to watching TV and things of that nature. So I hardly, especially during this time of being quarantined when we're both home, I hardly watch a lot where I'm watching what I want to watch. We did agree to watch the Big Show together, which I watched.
That's the one show that, ironically enough, my wife and daughter were the one that says, hey, we should watch this, because they watched the first 2 episodes without me, and they said, hey, this is actually really good, and I think you'd like it. So I did sit and binge that. I mean, it's only 8 episodes, but
it was fun. Like, I mean, it's a cheesy sitcom.
It's a Full House type show, but made a little more modern. So
I enjoyed it just because Big Show's in it, and they featured a few wrestlers. I liked it. I also watched the main event, the wrestling version of Like Mike. And I enjoyed it. Keith Lee was in it. Mia Yim was in it. Otis was in it. Miz, Kofi. So we watched some of those things because my wife can kind of get behind that a little bit more. She's not a big wrestling person. But I'm a really busy person. I youth pastor. I do Christian hip hop. I game a little bit. So I kind of balance my time working on different projects and things. So if I'm watching something, usually I'm in the background. I usually watch Marvel things. I'm a huge superhero person, so rewatch a lot of the Marvel MCU stuff. And then I also am a huge Fast and Furious fan, so I've been kind of going back and watching all of the Fast and Furious movies.
How many of those? A legit question. How many of those are they up to now? 8.
Without the Hobbs and Shaw one, I think it's 9. They're getting ready to drop 9, I think.
Okay.
So.
This isn't a question, but I wanted to mention this because this is exactly why I picked out the theme that I did. Mark says, every time I hear the intro music, I close my eyes and imagine walking out with Arn Anderson throwing up the 4 fingers. It's very Horseman-esque, and that's why I picked it for our intro, because I'm the same way. Whenever I first heard it, I'm just like, man, this is like a modern take on what the 4 Horsemen theme was back in the 90s. So I'm glad someone else, especially Mark, thought the same thing. So let's see. Anthony says, question, thoughts on the NWA and how they broadcast on YouTube with content. So I wanted to tackle this question for sure, regardless of where we're at on time, and we're doing fine on time. So I read an article just this morning that allegedly NWA Power was what's the word I'm looking for here? Proposed isn't the right word, but it was pushed as a potential WWE network show. And like, I was so shocked when I read that. I'm just like, is that really what man, I'm blanking on names today. What's the guy's name that owns NWA? Red Hot Chili Peppers guy. Hold on, I gotta look it up here. This is ridiculous. It's on the tip of my tongue too. Not Red Hot Chili Peppers, Smashing Pumpkins.
You're all about the names today.
It's definitely a Monday.
Killing the names.
Definitely.
Billy Corgan.
Billy Corgan, yeah. So I think that would have been a terrible way to go, to try to put NWA on WWE Network. I'm glad it's on YouTube. Again, I'm a very much an old school fan, so I like the studio setup. I like how I like the presentation of it. I do hope that eventually, once it's back on regularly, that the in-ring aspect of it becomes more exciting. Again, I've been kind of spoiled in this from the standpoint that, you know, if you tune into a New Japan event, I mean, you're almost guaranteed to have at least a 4-star match, if not better. But I like the presentation of it for sure. I like the old school feel, but they've kind of put a modern take on it. I do like, I actually love the fact that they're using the old school NWA domed globe for their belt. They're using the old school NWA television belt for their belt. I do wish it was on a red strap, but that's neither here nor there. So yeah, in general, I like it. I just wish the in-ring aspect of it will hopefully pick up.
What was the exact question?
It just says, this was sent in by Anthony. Question: thoughts on the NWA and how they broadcast on YouTube with content?
I love the YouTube idea. I love that it's not something that is like necessarily broadcasted on TV, because we're in an era where even like cable companies are starting to become irrelevant, and now everything's kind of switching to streaming platforms with Hulu and Sling, and eventually every channel is going to have its own network, and you're just going to pay for the channels that you would watch. It's kind of where things look like they're headed. So I like that I can just hop on YouTube and watch it. I love the roster. I think I've said that before. Like, looking at who they have on their roster, there's a lot of people on there that I've watched early on in their careers, mid-careers, and enjoy that. I get bored with it about halfway through. There seems to be a lot more promo cutting, in my opinion, than there is wrestling sometimes. Or it just falls flat in a sense. There's only about one match usually each episode where I was like, man, that was a good match to watch. And I think it's hard for me to watch it because I'm unfamiliar with the product. Like WWE, I could watch a whole episode of NXT and every match be lackluster, and it wouldn't bother me as much because I'm familiar with the product. Where with NWA, I'm trying to get into it, and so far it's like every time I try to watch it, it falls flat for me. So it's hard to get into a promotion when it's falling flat. But it still always keeps my interest just from the roster standpoint. I like seeing some of the Trevor Murdoch, James Storm with Eli Drake, and Nick Aldis, Damian Sandow, whatever he goes by on that.
Aaron Stevens.
Melina is on there. So a lot of people I like watching from the past kind of ended up on there, and so I kind of enjoy watching that. But from this, again, it kind of falls flat sometimes, and it's hard for me to stay in tune with it.
Gotcha. Conrad asks, question, do you think Natty deserves one big push and to carry the belt for a while? In my opinion, she is one of the best in the biz and helped change women's wrestling. I feel like WWE totally missed with her and Ronda. Natty could have taken the angle of being bitter, of being overlooked, and Ronda getting all the attention, even when Natty helped her. Heel Natty could have been strong. I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things where I'd be okay with it, but I don't honestly have an opinion one way or the other. I mean, she's had some runs as being champion, and I think she's at a point where, I mean, gosh, she's been in WWE since maybe mid 2000s.
A while.
I got to look. It's been a while. Let's see.
I'm trying to think of when she came in, because she came in, with the remake of The Heart.
So 2007. The Heart Dynasty didn't happen until 2009.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's 13 years, and so I mean, how many times has she been champion? Let's see. She's been
Divas champion probably a few.
She's
times.
only been champion twice. I'm surprised by that. I thought
were they both Diva title runs though, or did she get a
one was a SmackDown Women's title. I remember that because she beat Naomi.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd be okay with giving her another run. I'm kind of indifferent about it. I mean, I definitely think she deserves another one. As far as the storyline with her and Ronda, I mean, again, same thing. I think they could have made that work. And the thing I don't necessarily agree with is having Natalya be the heel, especially with, I don't know how they were. I get the standpoint of it, but I think if you try to put Ronda over as a face and then have a heel Natalya, you're going to have people cheering a heel Natalya attacking Ronda.
Yeah, it's hard.
Again, I don't have a huge opinion on it. Again, I'm just kind of indifferent.
My standpoint would be more, I agree that I feel like they did miss the mark with her. I think that she kind of started to pop late in her career with WWE, and now the problem is that I feel like there are so many other women that are more talented than her in the ring, that it would be hard and almost unbelievable for me to fathom that she would win the women's belt over somebody that's prominent right now. I wouldn't be against her winning it. Like, I wouldn't be like, it wouldn't be one of those things where I'm like, I can't believe Natalya just won that belt. But it would have to be one of those gimmicks that are done just in the complete right way, or storylines that were done in the complete right way. Like, Natalya would almost have to be the face in it because they would need people behind her for it to get over.
Right.
Her beating Ronda and like a comeback story or underdog story, like something like that would be the only way I could see it happening. I don't think she's undeserving of it. I don't think that she's I also don't think she's in a place in her career where I think she's the person we should waste a push on, though, either. I think there's so many other talents, whether they're on NXT currently or on the main roster or on SmackDown or Raw already, that deserve that push more than her. And I think she's okay with that. I think she's kind of in the veteran role where she knows it's time to put over some of these other women. If I can help do that via tag team or via kind of managing or via doing a feud with them, I'll do that. I liked her feud with Lacey Evans. I thought it was good from the standpoint that it helped get Lacey over. So yeah, it wouldn't make me mad, but I just don't think it makes sense.
Yeah. Mark asks an individual question for both of us. He asks me, what is your favorite year of old school wrestling and what promotion from that year? Probably 1987. I'd kind of bridge 1987, 1988. I'd say Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, but I mean, even WWF that year was good. I'm sorry, I said Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. It's technically, I don't think it was it WCW. I don't think it was at WCW quite yet. In 88, I think it transitioned to WCW, but 87, 88, Mid-Atlantic and WWF. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. That's probably my answer without overthinking it. He also asks question for Cole. Have you started to watch anything old school other than WWE? If so, what and why?
That's a tough. I don't know how far back you're wanting to date the past.
As far back as you want to go, can go.
I've watched certain promotions throughout time and can go back and watch some of those. Like I thoroughly enjoyed watching NWA when it was kind of TNA and NWA kind of doing their thing together. And I watched a lot of TNA growing up. I actually would record TNA and WWE on my DVR, and I would watch TNA first because I just thoroughly enjoyed watching AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, some of those guys during their start. The other promotion that I used to watch, it was only on TV for a little while before it kind of lost its steam, was Wrestling Society X. When it came on TV, I was watching
That was on MTV. I remember that.
Evan Bourne, Matt Sydal, whatever you want to call him. He was on the product and was kind of one of their top people, and so that's kind of where I got introduced on him. As far like I like to date back and watch some of the Ruthless Aggression, WWF kind of era stuff. That's kind of the wrestling that got me kind of hooked on wrestling. Was like I'm a huge tag team person. That's why I think I like AEW, because they have so much tag team in it. But I grew up watching the Hardy Boys, the Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian, Too Cool. I like watching some of those things. So when I go back to watch, I typically cater to WWF because that's what got me into it. But I do like watching TNA, NWA stuff as far as dating back to when I started watching it. I do want to get back into watching some of the older stuff. Sometimes it's hard for me to watch because wrestling's evolved so much over the years. It's kind of like trying to go, if you started watching basketball now, you would have a hard time watching Michael Jordan play in the 80s, in the 90s. And
yeah. Okay, so that brings up an interesting question that I was going to pose to you as well as everyone watching right now. So I mentioned earlier in the show that ESPN is airing I think it's a 10-part documentary on the Bulls dynasty / Michael Jordan. The first 2 parts aired last night.
Yeah.
Who is, and you guys can answer this if you're on the stream as well, who is your Michael Jordan of wrestling? I'm not saying Michael Jordan of WWE or WCW,
Currently,
AEW,
or like we're talking
overall.
We're talking greatest
ever,
of all time.
ever.
Oh my goodness!
Well,
On the spot,
I
you're
wouldn't.
gonna
I
ask
wouldn't.
me-
Well, let's put it this way. I wouldn't say greatest of all time because some people don't think Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time. Which, in my opinion, I
Wrong.
think that's crazy.
I'm just kidding.
But you also have people that you have people that view it in a different lens because they never watched Michael Jordan. They're more
LeBron James,
Kobe Bryant,
Kobe.
So
Some would say Allen Iverson.
if someone said Allen Iverson, then they need to watch some more NBA.
A lot of people are big Allen Iverson
Um,
fans.
I mean, right off the bat, mine's Ric Flair. I mean, that's because you've got here's my logic. Michael Jordan transcends time for most people, even if you didn't watch him. Ric Flair continues to transcend time because he's still doing. I'm not saying I like them because I don't. I think they're really cheesy and dumb. But Ric Flair is still in rap videos. He still does the the sports appearances. He's been on College Game Day prior to college football games. People know Ric Flair. I'm not saying Hulk Hogan because Hulk Hogan, I feel like I'm trying to put a good rationale to this. I don't think I can. I think it's Ric Flair for me.
That's hard because, like, for me, like I can't go back and name like Flair. The only thing I can really think of with Flair for me watching the product as long as I have, which is not near the amount of some other people. Like I think of Flair when he was with Evolution, and I think of Flair when he was in TNA and his Impact run, doing Fortune and some of the things he did there, and his Shawn Michaels retirement match, and that's like the only like iconic moments with Flair that I can remember watching. So this kind of goes into that argument of why someone would pick LeBron James over Michael Jordan because they got to watch him play and they didn't really get to watch Michael. Now, I will always say Michael Jordan because I actually was able to go back and watch Michael Jordan play and see that there was just something about the way that he played that was more dominant than I've seen LeBron play. I've also played basketball at a higher level to know the competition level and what that looks like. I've never been a wrestler. I don't know what the business is like on the inner side of things. So my answer is a little bit harder to dictate. But for me,
It's John Cena.
I saw from a personal standpoint, I will always say John Cena is the best of all time just because of the draw that he was. But as far as if I have to take it from a statistical standpoint, oh man, for me it's between Stone Cold and it's a three-way tie. Like I understand the Ric Flair argument, which is why I would always keep him in the conversation because he does transcend. Like as far as wrestling history goes, he's all over it. But for me, Stone Cold, The Rock.
So you could throw a lot of guys into this.
Stone Cold, The Rock, and Ric Flair are the three because these are guys that they could not afford to lose. Like when The Rock left the business to go to Hollywood, it really hurt.
Yeah.
And I just watching the Ruthless Aggression documentary, they talked about how big of a hit it hurt when he stepped out and went into Hollywood. And then I kind of think you saw that when John Cena even kind of stepped out, and there was really no one ready to step up into the role, like the kind of role he was playing.
Right.
He was such a huge cog in the system that it's hard to fill that with somebody else who wasn't ready. So Stone Cold definitely would probably be my number one pick, though, just because it doesn't matter when he came, how his music hit, the crowd goes wild.
Yeah. That's a fair pick. We had some on this on the comments saying Stone Cold. Jerry, thank you. Jim Crockett Promotions. I'm having multiple insane brain lapses today. I can't believe I said Red Hot Chili Peppers earlier. That's gonna get me. Hey, Trevor, thanks for tuning in, buddy. I appreciate it. Conrad says Flair. Clayton says, "Oh wow, just one person." Yeah, it's it. I mean, it's a tough one. I mean, it's hard. It's hard enough to pick your Mount Rushmore of wrestling, much less just picking one. Matthew says Ric Flair, no doubt. William says Hogan or Austin or Flair. Matthew says I used to hate Flair, but yes, Flair transcends time. Dusty says Sting. He carried WCW and he went to WWF and WWE. Or had he went, he would have potentially had more titles than Flair. I don't know about that. I mean, he definitely would have. I think he would have been a better fit than Ultimate Warrior. But again, that's kind of a hindsight's 2020 kind of thing. Thomas says Flair. Matthew says Hogan was not great in the ring. He was not great in the ring in WWF. But if you go watch whenever he was in New Japan, he could wrestle, but WWF kept him in a box as far as his in-ring ability. I mean, he was doing what's the bicycle kick thing where he's doing enziguri kicks on guys. Matthew says Flair was entertaining in ring and on the mic. Clayton says I would put Stone Cold in it as well. Okay, let's get to some more questions, and then we're gonna have to wrap this up shortly. Let's see. Just trying to go to the next question that I see here. Bear with me just a second. Jonathan says, I wonder if the third belt is the Winged Eagle. You'll have to tune in Thursday and find out. Jamie says, fingers crossed for NWA Magnum US. Again, guys, tune in Thursday and you'll find out, I promise. Having to scroll a little ways to the next question. Alan says, heard of SCW Pro. I have not heard of that.
Mm-mm.
Bear with me, guys. I just don't want to scroll over anyone's question. Okay, so this is interesting. We'll kind of talk about this a little bit, not for too long, because I want to get to some of your other guys' questions. Matthew says, "Hey guys, I think I know the answer. I know this answer, but I have been hearing news reports and rumors about Roman Reigns basically being removed from WWE and has been fired, but they have not announced it yet. I don't believe it at all. Your thoughts?" No, he's not been fired. They're just keeping him off storylines because they don't know how long he's going to be off TV. There's no need to keep him prominently in the storylines if they don't know when he's coming back. I mean, that's really all there is to it. Especially if they're going to go the route of taping content for the next X amount of weeks, you're not going to mention him. I mean, fans are going to know who he is when he comes back. He's not an Ali. People know Roman Reigns. So,
yeah, you do this with any wrestler. When they're off TV, you don't really mention them. It's just the fact that Roman Reigns is why people are kind of overreacting to it, I feel like. But like when someone's off TV, they don't mention them because they want the pop to be big when they come back, when that music hits, when that storyline is back in town or whatever. They either do a real big build and announce they're coming back, or they do that surprise, entrance when they come in. So I think it's just to keep him out of the public eye. He just had twins. He just had some kids.
twins on the way.
Or announced that they were having twins. So I think he's already kind of a private guy. I think it might be his request too. You don't, like I said, he made it very clear. You don't know what's going on in his life. You don't know what's happening. He might have requested that they take his name off air for now. Like,
right.
Don't use me right now.
Guys, if you have any more questions, send them in. I think I've got to all of them.
There was a few that I saw. Somebody asked what our favorite sports teams were, I think.
That's not showing up on my stream here.
Let me go back here.
Favorite sports team, I mean,
pro, college.
For me, I would have to say, I mean, there's not really a rhyme or reason to this other than just this is how my family's been. So we're in the St. Louis area, but I'm a St. Louis Blues fan, but that's really the only St. Louis team that I like. I'm a Cubs fan. I'm a Bears fan. I'm a U of I fan. I went to Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, so I'm very much a fan of any of their sports teams. They actually, while I was going to school there, their girls softball team won the national championship. I don't know if that was Division 1 or not. I know they've made the switch to Division 1, but they might have still been Division 2 at that point. I'm just curious. I'm going to look because this is our show and we can do whatever we want. I'm just kidding. So that was
Somebody else had asked us some questions too.
So yeah, that was Division 2, but like I said, they've since changed to Division 1. So yeah, any sport from my alma mater, SIU Edwardsville, U of I, pro sports teams again, Chicago Cubs, Chicago Bears, St. Louis Blues again. That's really the only St. Louis team that I like. I'll support our local teams. I mean, I'll go to Cardinals games. There is a local minor league team. I don't know if they have any affiliates, but we have a team called the Gateway Grizzlies. I've been to one of their games before. Our company, I don't know if they still are or not. I know that sounds awful, but actually, I should say one of our companies because we have multiple companies here in this facility, but one of our companies is actually a corporate sponsor of the Gateway Grizzlies. So I don't really watch the NBA much anymore. I mean, really, ever since Michael Jordan retired is when I stopped watching the NBA. I kind of got into it a little bit when the Steph Curry phase hit. So,
as far as sports go, the main sport that I typically watch is football. That I get to actually follow with. I'm a big fantasy football guy. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. My dad, Dallas Cowboys fan during the Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin era. And so I just kind of grew up a Dallas Cowboys fan. Really loved Brett Favre, so I used to follow the Packers and Brett Favre. And then I also watched him when he was a Viking. Didn't really watch him on the Jets. But that's kind of who I follow in football. Just love football. Basketball, I've always been a Chicago Bulls fan. I love Michael Jordan, but I followed the Bulls the entire time.
Were you wearing a Bulls shirt when you came in today?
Bulls hoodie, yeah.
Okay.
I have a Bulls hoodie.
I was like, was I spaced that
I
one?
loved Derrick Rose. I was really sad to see like the career and the way things went for him when he was a Bulls fan or a Bulls player. So it's hard to watch the Bulls right now. So I don't follow them heavy, but I'm a Cardinals fan. I love watching the Cardinals play. St. Louis Blues fan. And as far as college sports go, I don't really watch college football. Not against it. I just it falls on a day that I'm really busy usually, so it's hard to follow it. But I like college basketball. I'm a Kentucky Wildcat fan when it comes to basketball. So I mean it's kind of the extent of sports. I like to play sports more than I like to watch them. So
yeah, and I'm kind of the same way. I mean, I won't say I like to play them as much as I like to watch them. I mean, I like to do both pretty equally. I will say I was really bummed when they canceled March Madness this year. I mean, that's like my so my I'd say my favorite times of the year are Thanksgiving / Christmas season. It's probably got to be my all-time favorite. And then really March and April because of March Madness, my birthday, WrestleMania season kind of all fall in the same time frame. So March Madness being a big part of that and it being canceled. Obviously, WrestleMania being not what it normally is. A little bit of a lackluster time of year or lackluster time of year this year. So, yeah, it is what it is.
This question was asked earlier, too, so I don't know if Clayton, I don't know if you were the one that asked it earlier, too, but I thought someone else asked it. Someone asked about, I remember someone asking about rivalries, like, what are some ones that we can date back to that we really enjoyed or liked, or it was asked earlier. My feed won't go any higher.
That's fine. We'll do this one and one more question, and then I think we're gonna wrap it up. So, my favorite rivalries in wrestling, anything Four Horsemen against Road Warriors, Dusty Rhodes, Magnum TA. Even Flair versus Sting, Hogan versus Andre, what else? I was into Shawn Michaels and Triple H.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I mean, Austin Rock can't really beat that. Even the Von Erichs versus the Freebirds in WCCW. You had let's see. William mentions a good one, Warriors and the Midnight Express. Yeah, I mean, that's just to name a few. I could probably name, like, if I sat here and thought for the next 15 minutes, I could probably give you 20 more.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to keep it to like around 5. I really enjoyed the Eddie Guerrero Rey Mysterio feud, especially the I Quit match that they had. One that people are gonna laugh at this one. I really enjoyed the DX reunion versus the Spirit Squad, Vince McMahon. There was just a lot of comedy gold, and
it was good. I mean, you can throw in the McMahons into that too.
The whole I just kick Stan. When DX just returned, like that, I didn't get to see DX when DX was DX. So to get to kind of see the nostalgia and that was cool for me. So I enjoyed that one. A lot of the old tag team, not old, but some of the tag team feuds with the Hardys, the Dudleys, Edge and Christian. A lot of the ladder matches that happened there were great. AJ Styles and Samoa Joe in TNA. Not so much. I mean, the WWE version of it was good, but it was a little bit late in both of their careers. And I'll throw Christopher Daniels in there too. That match that they had, that triple threat match that they had, was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, TNA it was so much better when it first came out.
As soon as it changed hands and they started bringing in guys like Hogan and Eric Bischoff and things like that, it really went downhill. But Undertaker and Orton, I really enjoyed that storyline and that WrestleMania match. Trying to think if there's any others that just pop out at me. I mean, there's a ton of John Cena ones I can name. I love John Cena and JBL's feud. There's a lot of good ones there too. So
I was a big fan of the Omega and Okada program. I mean, that kind of stretched across 2 years basically. I mean, even to this day, I mean, you can put the Flair Steamboat trilogy, which that's another good feud right there. You can put the Flair Steamboat trilogy up against it. Between the 4 matches that Omega and Okada had and the 3 matches that Flair and Steamboat had, I would say all 7 of them are in my top 10 favorite matches of all time. And that's saying something. You've got 4 guys that comprise at least 7 of my top 10 favorite matches of all time, maybe possibly more. I don't throw, depending on if, to be completely honest, the match at AEW Revolution that I had the privilege of watching live has got to be in my top 10. That was a phenomenal tag match.
Yeah.
William says Jericho and Omega was good. Yeah,
Jericho's had a lot of good feuds.
Jericho's one that flies under the radar as far as feuds, but he had a lot of good ones.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's get to one more question, and then we're going to wrap this up. Conrad says, well, first he says, great show, guys. Fun time. I appreciate you taking the time to do this podcast. We appreciate you guys tuning in. So we enjoy doing it. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us, whether it's for 5 minutes or for the entire show, especially still, hanging out with us, the video going out and then coming back. Again, we really appreciate it. So I want to read Conrad's last question. He says, since Ryder is so popular and has the #1 selling tee on ProWrestlingTees.com, do you think wherever he lands, he will be a top guy? I would say it depends on where he goes. I would say I could see it going a number of different ways. If let's say he goes to New Japan, again, just playing fantasy booking. If he goes to New Japan but kind of has like an edgier character, like a more aggressive character, I could see him being thrown into a top feud and being a main event-esque level guy, maybe going after the IWGP United States or IWGP United Intercontinental titles, one of those two. I don't see him being thrown into a main title picture right away. He might fit into an AEW TNT title picture. But as far as the top guy, I don't think he'll be thrown into any kind of world title picture. Quite frankly, ever. No matter how much fan traction he gets. That's just my opinion. I could easily see him going to NWA and having a title shot against Nick Aldis. It depends on where he goes. That's my answer.
I definitely agree from the standpoint that it definitely depends on where he goes. When you talk about Zack Ryder has a lot of internet fame, a lot of just overall people know who he is and enjoy that.
That's what I was going to say. Regardless of whatever he goes by, whatever his name is, people recognize his face.
People enjoy him and that side of things. And I think that's a testament to why his T-shirt sold so well and is selling so well. But like you said, like if you go to New Japan, like if we're going to just talk about some of the major promotions he could go to, if you're going to go to New Japan, he is not a talented enough wrestler to hold a candle to half of the guys on that roster. He's a great on the mic worker. He's a great consistent worker, but he's not somebody that I could just see in the main title picture in New Japan because he's not near the talent level, especially now. He's rusty. He hasn't had a lot of matches. He's a little bit older in his career now. So I just don't see him working a main title picture in New Japan. Same with AEW. So, and this goes back to my argument or kind of my speech that I gave at the beginning of the show, is that AEW can't sign all these guys that are free agents. And I don't think Zack Ryder, other than the standpoint that he's a good merch seller, I don't think he's worth the contract because there's no prominent role, in my opinion, for him on AEW except in the tag division. So, again, the tag division is overflowing, though, with talent. So then you go into the argument, is he worth putting him with a tag partner and getting them over? Because there's a lot of guys who deserve that push in the tag division right now. So I could see a TNT title. I could see it, but I don't know if I would be excited about it. Just because, again, there's a lot of guys in AEW's roster, especially if they're going to sign like a guy like Rusev, and you start looking at some of the other guys who could get signed or get pushed and break from tag teams. And you got to remember, Adam Hangman Page is eventually going to be a singles wrestler. Kenny Omega is going to go back to singles wrestling. Like, there's going to be guys who are in tag teams now who won't be. And so that's kind of my thought process there, is that I just don't think he fits AEW because there's so many other people who deserve and will get pushes, and I don't think he's one of those guys. I really see if he's going to want to be a top guy, he's going to want to go to Impact or to NWA. I could honestly see him being a big face in NWA. It'd be a good merch seller for them. It would be a good draw for them. He's a huge face, baby face that could get over against the Nick Aldis. And the wrestling style fits more his style. Impact is a little bit more diverse in what they have on the roster to where he could have good matches and be a good merch seller, but both of those are a little lackluster compared to some of the other options for him to sign with. Ultimately, and I gave my opinion on this when we talked about him being released initially, is that I see Zack Ryder more being somebody's manager. I feel like Zack Ryder, yes, he can wrestle, and that's great because you can still use him in storylines to do that, like kind of a Sami Zayn where he kind of pops in and out of matches and gets involved, but he's so good on the mic. He has such internet fame. Why not use that to get other people over and still keep him over at the same time? Put him with someone who sucks on the mic. Put him with someone who has a lot of wrestling ability, but just can't seem to have a good promo cut, and let him get that person over. Zack Ryder also needs to change his gimmick. I don't think the woo-woo party boy gimmick is going to work on the independent scene. Someone fantasy booked and talked about him and Noah Jose getting together. That would be a funny tag team. Like, I get the comedic aspect, but no one would take them seriously, and especially the only place that they would really get over with that would be like maybe AEW, just because there's so many good tag teams to work with.
And you're not going to try to revitalize your career by going by leaving WWE and being a comedy act.
Yeah, very few people can get over with it. I mean, Joey Ryan got over with it a little bit, and Colt Cabana these guys can still wrestle too, but there's very few people, that can pull off an R-Truth comedy gimmick that still gets over with the fans and can be relevant on TV. And I just don't think Zack Ryder's one of those guys. I think he was a good heel at one point. So, I mean, I think he's one of those guys that needs to reinvent himself, repackage himself, and then go try again. And that's when we could see if he's going to be a top guy or not, is how he repackages himself and where that fits in a promotion.
Yeah, William says that could be a mid-card champ in Impact, Ring of Honor, or NWA.
Ring of Honor would be decent.
I'm completely leaving out Ring of Honor.
It doesn't get the Ring of Honor. Is just it's always been viewed, I think, lower than what it really is. It has a lot of talent on it. I don't think, he doesn't fit Ring of Honor to me, though. Like, Ring of Honor still has a lot of high energy, and Zack Ryder's not like a high energy wrestler. Like, as far as his wrestling talent, he's a very slow pace, keep the match very balanced kind of wrestler. I don't see him fitting in with like a high flying or high energy type.
Ring of Honor is pretty much two ends of the spectrum. You've got, like you said, your guys that are flying off the top rope, or you've got your big grappler kind of guys. Like he's really not either. And so I agree. I don't think he fits in Ring of Honor.
NWA makes the most sense.
I agree. I think if he is going to be an in-ring talent, NWA is what makes the most sense. And quite frankly, I think that's where he would have the best chance of becoming a upper mid card to upper card talent. I don't think Impact is a good spot for him.
Not right now. Not with the current climate. Impact, and I'm not against Tessa Blanchard being the champion. I don't really care about that. But with the current climate that Impact is in, I feel like it would be a bad move for most prominent wrestlers to go there right now. I don't think, not that Rusev's going there, but I don't think Rusev or the Revival or Zack Ryder should go there. The only one that I think should go there, honestly, is EC3, just because of the past history, and I would be okay with him taking the belt off of Tessa Blanchard.
Impact, I think, is on the way down, though.
But Impact is slowly falling apart, and unless they sign some of these guys and then really put the pieces and the puzzle back together, they're really losing fans' interest, because the guys that are getting over are then leaving because they got so over that somebody else that's more prominent wants them. It will be very soon before you see Sami Callihan leave and go to AEW, NXT, WWE, somewhere else where his creativity can be more appreciated. It wouldn't shock me if Tessa Blanchard leaves at some point and goes to AEW or to NXT. I know there's some controversy around her. But there's a lot of people that are on. Michael Elgin is another one. Eddie Edwards. Like, some of those guys are so talented that eventually they're going to end up somewhere else, because Impact's not going to be able to give them the payday that they could get somewhere else.
Agreed. Real quick, before we end the show, I want to plug Being the Elite real quick. If you follow that, they're having their BTE 200th episode today. It premieres today at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central Time. They're building their Matt Jackson versus Nick Jackson match as kind of a, I think, a Falls Count Anywhere kind of match. I enjoy watching it. That's really the only reason I plug it. I think it's a fun content to watch, given the lack of wrestling content that's out there now. The last few episodes, they've actually had matches on it. And Excalibur actually provides some pretty funny commentary at times. And that's pretty much it, guys. Again, we appreciate you tuning in and hanging out with us. We enjoy the back and forth conversation. I like the opinions. Keep them coming. Whether we agree or not, we can all agree that
you're wrong.
No. we can all agree that in some respects we all enjoy wrestling. We enjoy the product, depending on the company, I should say. again, we appreciate the well wishes and the nice comments you guys provide, the encouraging comments. It's they're always welcome. You're welcome to contact us anytime. A reminder, the third belt in our giveaway will be revealed this upcoming Thursday. So check us out.
Let's get those 29 likes by Thursday.
Yeah, if once we get to 2,000 guys, we're gonna do the belt giveaway.
How great would it be this Thursday to just be there?
Agreed. Just real quick too, we've had a few people ask us. You do not have to be watching or listening to us live to win, but you do have to respond within 24 hours. Otherwise, you will forfeit your win, so to speak. But yeah, we're live every Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. We're live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. I try to remember to post the live link in our Twitter feed as well. I actually noticed Twitter was having issues earlier, at least on my end, so I don't know if the link got posted or not.
You can always go back and listen too. Like, that's the thing I want people to understand, is that you can go back and listen on our YouTube page, on our Facebook page. So you're not missing. It's great to be here live because you can ask the questions and get involved with what we're talking about. But you can always go back and follow and watch the show on all of our platforms.
Correct. And if you ever, like I said, if you ever have any questions about anything, send us a message, reply to any of our posts. We try to stay active on our pages, on our social media pages. You can also follow us at Instagram.com/goingbrdwypod. We're going to be doing future giveaways. If you have followed our Instagram page or subscribe to our YouTube page. So again, that link is right there. Subscribe to our YouTube page. Even if you just watch us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube page. Follow our Instagram page at Instagram.com/goingbrdwypod. We're going to do some giveaways for those in the future. So if you follow us across all of our social media platforms, you're more likely to win something. So, and we want you to be a part of it. So for Cole, for myself, Alex, thanks again for tuning in, and we will catch you on Thursday.
And so, goodbye. Mwah. And good night. Bang!
This podcast was a presentation of LightUpMedia.fm.